story is really central to a lot of this, to the answer to this question. And, you know, as a person of color, for example, if I live in an all-white town with all-white statues, and I go to my public park and I see memorials for all-white heroes, and, you know, I go to an all-white school and I learn all of the, you know, perspectives and stories and history from a white perspective, from all white teachers. And I read a newspaper where all the authors are white and have a very specific perspective and, you know, style of storytelling. And I look in my environment, which is specifically designed to center the ideas and beauty according to this specific demographic. I might, as a person of color, feel like I don't belong, and that the story I'm seeing around me is that I'm not wanted, I'm less than, I don't matter, and all of these things. And, you know, like right now I'm using an example of race, but this can be an experience of many folks who experience state-sanctioned homelessness and, you know, our trans and non-binary community. Many people, you know, when we don't feel reflected in our community and landscape. And so story is deeply intertwined with our identity and our values and what we care about and what we are taught to care about. And if we aren't reflected in that story, we often have an experience of feeling of, you know, not belonging, not feeling welcome in our community. And, you know, so when we look at trauma, we see that people aren't only impacted by a traumatic event or something happening to them, but they're impacted a lot by story and the ways that stories are told and who's telling the story and how that story is being told. And, you know, so I say all this to really say the sense of belonging and connection is this deep embodied experience that can't be faked because it's embodied and it lives in our bones. And when you have legacies of being harmed, of land being taken from you, of consistently seeing your people harmed on land, that lives in you. And it lives in your bones and your blood and in your spirit. And it hurts in this deep way that's invisible to folks who may not have experienced that or don't currently experience that. And even, you know, for even like a minute, if you can just imagine, if you're someone who owns a home or who lives in a home that you love or consider safe, or, you know, if you have access to land or hiking trails or places that you feel like you belong, then you may be able to really understand how central that is to your survival and thrival, you know, just like being able to come to a safe place, your home, where you can make dinner or have a cup of tea or hang out with a friend or take a bath or plant and smell flowers and, you know, listen to birds or crickets without having to worry about that being taken from you, you know, a space that you've designed and created, you know, for your own safety and belonging and connection. And if that's something that's meaningful to you, it might make sense why that would be meaningful to people who don't have access to that. And it might help us to really start to understand the imbalances that come when, you know, access to earth and into home is stolen from us. You know, and so Malcolm X says all revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. It's all based on land. And I think this quote really speaks volumes to the importance of land, because we come from the earth and we're made of earth. And when we die, we go back to the earth. We often put ourselves in this position of dominance and, you know, these like transactional relationships and ruling over the earth, but really we're part of this bigger ecosystem that works in a really interconnected way, and land and home facilitate our ability to experience connection and belonging, because we're then able to have this, you know, embodied sense of security, of safety, and of our basic needs being met, of so many things. The ability for our nervous systems to really settle enough to be able to dream and imagine and envision and ultimately create, really, you know, the ability to do those things really relies on our ability to have access to land and to home and to a sense of place and belonging. And when those birthrights are stripped from us, it causes a lot of harm, mental illness, physical and chronic illness, and all kinds of things that are really preventable. And so when we have autonomy and the ability to design and create spaces that meet our community's needs, we start to, you know, really have access to our nervous system being able to settle in our culture, and identities being affirmed and reflected in our environment. And then we can really start to develop this embodied sense of connection and belonging. And, you know, this is really the basis of dismantling oppressive systems, because like, I'll give you one last quote of what George Monbiot said, which is, you know, dig deep enough into many of the problems this country faces and you'll soon hit land. Soaring inequality and exclusion, the massive cost of renting or buying a decent home, repeated financial crises sparked by housing asset bubbles, the collapse of wildlife and ecosystems, the lack of public anemones. The way land is owned and controlled underlies them all, yet it's scarcely featured in political discussions or decision making.